We are now live with the latest in the crypto world. It's 9:30 a.m. in New York City, 2:30 p.m. in London, 10:30 p.m. in Tokyo, and 3:30 p.m. here in Malta. We are joined by our crypto experts, Edward Iskra and Jason Fernandez, on the show today. But first, let's take a quick look at some of the market indicators. The cryptocurrency index, CCI 30, has returned back above the 4,000-point level. The index has gained 38% so far in May and 86% year to date. The 30-day Bitcoin volatility index edged further above the 4% level yesterday to settle at just slightly more than 4.4%. The coin market cap website's 24-hour traded volume indicator has been trending up. It has returned close to the $80 billion mark. The Messari website's real 10 volume indicator has declined to just over $2.8 billion. The Bitcoin dominance indicator has stayed near the 56% mark as the markets are moving sideways. The top 5 digital assets show no significant moves today. Bitcoin has continued trading close to the $8,000 territory. Ether has stabilized above the $250 mark. XRP is just slightly south of the 40-cent psychological level. Bitcoin Cash holds its ground above the $400 mark. EOS remains as the 5th asset by market cap, and it trades at just slightly less than $6.30. The Coin 360 heat map indicates that most of the large caps are trading higher. Bitcoin Cash is slightly in the red, while Bitcoin SV posts a sharp increase. According to the Token Spread website, Bitcoin trades at a discount of slightly more than 1% on the XMO exchange. The same exchange has the biggest intermarket spread of 0.13%. Let's now take a quick look at the characteristics of Seller Network. This is a layer scaling platform that enables fast, easy, and secure off-chain transactions. Not only payment transactions can benefit from this structure, but also general smart contracts. The network has its very own utility token that trades with the ticker CELR. This is one of the projects that recently sold their tokens on the Binance launchpad. Nearly 600 million tokens were sold in just 17 minutes at 0.6 of a cent per piece. The asset has surged significantly to trade at more than 2 cents. We will now review the performance of various cryptocurrency asset classes as grouped by the Messari website. The infrastructure group is the most bullish asset class today with a gain of 3.6%. The gain comes despite Cardano and Ontology trading in the red. The media and entertainment category is virtually unchanged with a gain of 0.35%. There are plenty of double declines here, but both Steam and Poet projects are up by more than 4%. The financial sector has gained nearly 1.5%. The Binance Coin and Chainlink are leading in terms of gains as they are up by double digits. The currency category is 3.3% in the green. Stellar Lumens and Tron are two of the bearish drivers, with a decline of slightly more than 1%. And lastly, the services section shows mostly gains, but the overall group is up by less than 1%. This is where the 5 major cryptocurrency categories stand so far this Wednesday. We will now provide you with an overview of the most significant moves among the top 100 digital assets. There are plenty of both double-digit gains and drops today. Let's take a look. These were the top 24-hour moves during the European morning trading session this Wednesday. We will now go to a short break, but we will be back shortly with our guests, so don't go anywhere.
There are 180 different countries all around the world, which makes us growing like a sphere.
We are stronger than ever.
Have these questions answered without disclosing anything.
AI field is mostly controlled by a few large corporations.
Much busier, bigger than ever.
In the mid-2020s. I do think that will come.
We should kind of keep in mind that we want the world to be a better place.
$15 billion a day. This is incredible.
People find a way to create infrastructure.
I think knowledge is one of the most important things in the world.
We laid the foundation for the distributed trust model that Satoshi builds on.
It does come with some risks, but at the same time, I think it's an opportunity for countries.
Individuals miss the boat on a market, they miss the boat. When the institutions miss the boat, they bring the boat back.
This is Blocks Live TV.
Blockchain and AI Summit is back in collaboration with the CC Forum for Blockchain, AI and Digital Innovation. This year is set to be packed full of amazing guests and topics. Blocks Live TV will be streaming the entire event from all three stages at once, with keynote speakers to workshops, focusing on everything from AI to regulations. If you can't make the event, then don't miss out. Head over to our website, blockslive.tv, where you can pick which stage you want to watch in real time. We are now back with our crypto experts, Jason Fernandez, COO and co-founder of AE Token, and Edward Iskra, member of the board at Bitcoin Gold. Guys, great to have you. How are you doing today?
Hi, Leo.
How are you doing?
Hi, Leo.
Great to have you. Now, cryptocurrency markets have settled down this week. We have already spoken to Edward about this period of relative stability. But Jason, what are your thoughts on this? Where do you see the market heading next?
So as far as the market in general is concerned, I think there will be quite a bit of correlation with Bitcoin as we've seen in the past. So overall, the market should track Bitcoin. As far as Bitcoin is concerned, I think it will likely hover just under 8,000 for a while until it picks up enough momentum to blow past it. Once it does get past, let's say 8,100 or so, it should pick up quite quickly to 8,500. So we've seen quite a bit of resistance around 8K. Every time it gets there, it seems to be knocked back down. But we've also seen a great deal of support at 8K. So when it fell down to 7K, there was enormous volume bringing it back up to 7,800, and that happened in rather short order. So that implies that there's quite a bit of support at the high 7,000s or maybe early 8,000s. And so I think that's it's sort of going to go that way for a bit until it picks up the momentum, and then we'll probably blow past 8,000 and probably easily in 8,500. If the trade war settles down, though, with China, that would negatively affect Bitcoin in the short term and could lead to some money sort of back into the stock market. But overall, I think I'm bullish.
Okay, so even though it's hovering around that 8,000 mark, it's not overall bad news there. So that is great to hear. Now, the Binance coin is the top performer among the top 10 digital assets by market cap. The asset has actually printed fresh all-time highs and continues trading above the $30 mark. So are there any particular bullish drivers? And can we expect further gains? We'll go to you, Edward.
Well, there are a host of bullish drivers for Binance Coin. Binance has been doing a lot of things right and has been building their environment. A lot of speculation yesterday around the bump in Binance centered around a somewhat cryptic Twitter post they made with just a 2.0, probably alluding to Binance Chain's second version release, but they haven't offered any details on that. They recently finished a giveaway, but none of that really makes sense for this particular bump yesterday. To be honest, when I look at it, the timing suggests that they were just sort of getting a corollary bump related to another big bump that happened yesterday. BSV took doubled in price at the same time as Binance had their rise, as well as a couple of other coins, including BTG. We could probably talk about BSV later, but I think the big rise in BSV is what really triggered a couple of other alts to get a bump. The thing about Binance to think about is the fact that it kept most of that value bump. So it came up with the market and it wasn't all dumped. People are continuing to hold it and trade it, and that's all bullish for Binance itself. But I have some concerns that Binance might be getting too into the sort of promotional, hypey side of things with their BNB coin. I'm worried that they might try to hype it too high, and then it'll have some hard falls as well. I would rather see them have it progress more smoothly.
Okay, so some concerns there. So, Jason, do you also share the same concerns? And do you also think it might be, as Edward says, a collaboration of quite a few other coins and moves there?
So I think there was the whole tweet about 2.0, and I think that may have had something to do with it. Overall, though, we've seen Binance just do incredibly well this year. There was a Binance burn in January, and that was a sort of bullish driver and led to a sort of pop because obviously less Binance coin, obviously the value of the remaining Binance coin sort of increases. Also, there's been Binance has proved to have just enormous staying power. So we had there was a massive hack. But what was unique, but is the way sort of Binance handled it. So CZ has been really outspoken. He's really come out and been fairly transparent. I think a couple of days ago he actually sent out an update on the hack and essentially explained what his company was doing to ensure that those sort of things don't happen again. And that's not really something that we see in general from a lot of cryptocurrency exchange CEOs. We don't really see that sort of transparency and also a willingness to admit that that they went wrong. Also, the Binance chain has been a huge bullish factor for it. The Binance decentralized exchange, which is supposed to sort of provide a more a less hand-holding way of trading cryptocurrencies where you still actually own the coins. Also, there's been Binance Launchpad, which has been a huge bullish driver for them because essentially to invest in a lot of these companies that Binance coin is launching, you have to have, that Binance is launching, you have to have Binance coin. And so that sort of creates a demand for Binance coin pretty much every time that there's a new company that partners with Binance. So that's sort of been one of the main bullish drivers. But overall, there hasn't been any one thing I think that could point to this this jump, except maybe the 2.0 and the thought that maybe that they've just been building and building, and so there's been a lot of just staying power and sort of an ability to continue to deliver at exactly what they're expected to do at over a period of time.
Okay,
if I can just add to that.
Of course you may. Please do.
I've taken a close look at the timing, and that 2.0 tweet came out an hour before any movement started. But the movement started immediately when the BSV pump happened. So honestly, I think what happened is that the sentiment and the excitement around that BSV pump caused more people to get interested in some of the other coins like Binance Coin. And all those positive bullish things that Jace just talked about are the reason nobody dumped their Binance Coin. And that's the interesting thing. Normally when you see a spike like this, some people will take profit, especially after Binance had just finished handing out a whole bunch of token giveaways. So people had this free coin. Why aren't they taking profits when it spikes up like this? That's because there are so many bullish, positive things about Binance Coin. That's why they're hanging on to them.
Okay, fantastic. So very much to do with the other companies that Binance has, of course, launched that you mentioned that, Jason. And I think you make an interesting point as well about the transparency of the hack, because I think that is something which a lot of people have, of course, praised CZ for. So that's absolutely fantastic there. Now, very interesting, kind of just moving away for Binance from the second. Today is actually Bitcoin Pizza Day. How exciting. So on May 22nd of 2010, 2 pizzas were purchased for 10,000 Bitcoins. At that time, you could purchase 10,000 Bitcoins for $25 back then. So both of these examples give great perspective. So do you think 9 years from now will actually be equally shocking when we could say, oh, look, back in 2019, we were able to buy Bitcoin for just $8,000? So Jason, we'll go straight to you. What are your thoughts?
So this is obviously going to be a situation where there's decreasing returns. We're not going to see such a large jump. I mean, it's certainly going to be huge, but it's not going to be a jump between 10,000 Bitcoin to where we are right now, with each Bitcoin going at $8,000. So it'll certainly jump, and it will be shocking that Bitcoin was at 8,000 in 2019. But if you think about it, it's almost shocking that Bitcoin was at 3,000 3 months ago. So I think overall, we will likely see a massive jump between now and 2019. I mean, if you look at it, 9 years later, the last Bitcoin is likely to have already been mined. Bitcoin has gone through several halvings. Significant adoption has happened, likely be used possibly by some governments to be able to pay taxes. And also to shop at things like Whole Foods and buy your latte at Starbucks. So that sort of adoption and the fact that Bitcoin is going to be that much more scarce by 2019, I think we're going to see a massive, massive jump in the value of Bitcoin. It's not going to be commensurate with the jump between 10 years ago and now. It's going to be decreasing returns, but it's still going to be shocking for us to consider that one was even able to buy a Bitcoin that was remotely affordable in 2019, because there's only 21 million of these, and I've heard something like 30% of them have possibly been lost forever. So it's extremely scarce. It's an extremely scarce digital currency, and ultimately it's going to be shocking that one could even own an entire Bitcoin all for themselves.
So very, very exciting if you just look ahead and think, how we're going to be looking back. So Edward, straight to you now. Thoughts on Bitcoin Pizza Day for us, please?
First off, I'm craving pizza. It's an eating day for me, so I'm looking forward to it. Secondly, I do think people will be shocked at the price difference between now and 9 years from now. But I don't think it's going to be as shocking as this $10,000 pair of pizzas. If you think back, if you could have bought Bitcoin 9 years ago for $25 and it's worth $8,000 today, that is shocking. And if we have that kind of rise again over the next 9 years, it'll be shocking again. But you're talking about 9 years ago for $25 buying 10,000 Bitcoin. I don't think we're going to have that kind of growth again because, let's face it, those guys were very, very early adopters. They were buying and selling Bitcoin before most of the CIS community or intelligence community or computer community. Before anybody knew about it, they were already buying and selling it. So they were way ahead of the curve. So that's not going to happen again. But there's still a ton of money to be made by buying and holding Bitcoin and cryptos.
Okay, but I guess in the bigger picture, the ship has slightly sailed, unfortunately, for some. Now, just moving on, Craig Wright, the man who does claim to be Satoshi Nakamoto, has actually filed United States copyright applications for the Bitcoin white paper and most of the original code. So this has caused a lot of discussion in the crypto space. But what are your thoughts on this? Edward, we'll actually go back to you. What are your thoughts on this for us, please?
My thoughts are that the cost to file a copyright application are very, very low. Even when you consider that it costs, $50 to file, you still spend a couple grand on a good copyright attorney. It's still cheap. And the penalty for filing a false copyright application is only $2,500. That's a small price to pay for the kind of bump that we saw in BSV's price at the time that the news came out that the copyright application had been accepted. Now, the fact that the application was accepted does not mean it's correct. The reviewers frequently make mistakes. And one of the mistakes that we see people talking about in the crypto space today is, they published this for the code base. But if you look at the code base was explicitly released and published under an open source license. They specifically used the MIT copyright license, which gives right to anyone to use, modify, etc. the code. There is no restriction. You can't apply for copyright after releasing something into the community as a public document. So, this isn't something that someone who really was Satoshi would be doing. It's not something that can hold up, I think. It's almost impossible to hold up this kind of claim. But we'll see what happens. But it certainly caused a big pump in BSV's price.
I think you do make an interesting point when you say, it was everything that happens. It's cheap, actually, to file in comparison to the bump in BSV. Very interesting point there. And Edward, Jason, we'll go straight back to you. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, so he filed a registration. That doesn't mean that the Copyright Office has endorsed his view. And yes, as Edward pointed out, I think it's only like $2,500 that's a fine in case that they were mistakenly filed for copyright and they weren't exactly due it. So that's a small price to pay, even if you don't consider the massive bump that Bitcoin SV has seen. Even if you just consider the level that Craig Wright has been going around threatening to sue different people and just sort of making it this huge controversy in the crypto space. In the larger scheme of things, the $2,500 is almost nothing and really says very little about whether he is Satoshi Nakamoto. And again, as Edward pointed out, this is exactly one of the things I was thinking about. If Bitcoin is supposed to be open source, how do you go around copyrighting? And that seems like the Copyright Office hasn't quite looked at that. And if they haven't quite figured out that Bitcoin was the source code was all in the public domain, and they have managed to go ahead and allow him to file a registration, that probably doesn't say very much about how much they vet these sort of registrations. And I don't think they vet them at all. I think they just sort of somebody claims it, and then until it's challenged, I don't think people really go back and look at it.
Okay, so it doesn't seem like we take the claim that he is Satoshi Nakamoto too seriously. I don't think people are finding that much of a credible claim. So I must ask you, both of you, of course, Jason, excuse me, we'll go straight to you. Who do you think Satoshi Nakamoto is?
So I don't think it was Craig Wright, but I do believe that Craig Wright was probably one of the very, very early developers or early involved in at least the creation of Bitcoin. But I highly doubt, and I would say I don't think it was Craig Wright. But I think whoever it is probably either dead or in prison. And Craig Wright probably knows about it, and that's probably why he has the ability to make a claim, because he probably knows who it is, but it's probably not him.
Dead or in prison? Well, that is quite the claim. And what do we think? Edward, straight to you.
I'm kind of close to Jason's position here, based on everything I've looked at, and I did my own, go down the rabbit hole to see what we can find out. I honestly think that Satoshi Nakamoto was a team of people, and the most likely group of people for that would be Phil Wilson, Dave Kleiman, and Craig Wright. It's entirely possible that Craig had the initial idea because he had a reputation for doing broad looks on the internet into various subjects and deep dives into them. So that kind of cross-discipline approach is what brings the ideas for these kind of integrative things like Bitcoin. You remember, Bitcoin wasn't new in most aspects of it. What we call now Nakamoto consensus was a bit original, but everything else, even the idea of blockchain, wasn't actually new. It was picked up from somewhere else. It's entirely possible Craig Wright had the idea and put together this team of people, but it's the group of people that created the real Satoshi Nakamoto. Phil Wilson and Dave Kleiman, they were probably better developers, and Dave Kleiman was certainly a more brilliant cryptographer. They probably brought the best things to Bitcoin, and they certainly tempered Craig's worst impulses. The things that we've seen from Satoshi Nakamoto online, especially his postings, they don't sound like what we hear from Craig today. They sound more like what we've heard from Phil Wilson. They sound more like what we might expect from Dave Kleiman, someone who really didn't seem to want any exposure, who was really doing this just for the cause. I think in Craig's mind, he is Satoshi Nakamoto. He might have come up with the name, but in reality, it's that group that was Satoshi Nakamoto, and the others might have been more important to the execution of the project than Craig's original idea, assuming any of that's true. Regardless if that's true or not, Craig is certainly trying to claim all of the credit now, and he's been doing it in fraudulent ways, which is unfortunate, because if he was involved in the original, he's really tainting his name and painting himself as the least worthy part of that team that created this wonderful thing that we all bear fruit from today.
But I do think it's interesting that neither of you completely discount his claim. You do take something on board, whether he knows the person that it is or whether he was part of a team, and I do think that's quite an interesting point there. Now, as we have discussed, and you've both obviously mentioned, as a result, we did see the price of Bitcoin SV surging by more than 100%, and it has managed to hold on to most of those gains. So why would an asset jump so sharply on news like this, Jason?
So I don't think that there's like an exact answer to this. Really, I think it comes down to people essentially hearing that he had filed for a copyright and essentially misunderstanding what that meant, and then essentially assuming that meant that the Copyright Office had endorsed his view, and therefore it bumped up, because theoretically then that would mean that Bitcoin SV is a real Bitcoin. But you really have to wonder about his claims, because why in the world would Satoshi Nakamoto release this to the public, and then years after the fact, Craig Wright comes out and says, "Oh wait, I should copyright it." I mean, it just seems odd that he wouldn't copyright it from the get-go if that was his original intent. It certainly seems that there's two different people with two different intents at the very minimum. Okay, very interesting. And Edward, of course, your thoughts for us, please.
I agree with what Jay said, but I'll extend that a little more. It seems that Craig's right. Other businesses rely on him being able to sell himself as the man, Satoshi Nakamoto. They claim to have a suite, a patent portfolio with dozens of patents that for ideas he had, and they want to sell this company this set of patents as some sort of asset, and it gives a lot of credibility to that if he can claim that he's Satoshi Nakamoto. Plus, there's the ongoing lawsuit over billions of dollars worth of Bitcoin with the Dave Kleiman estate. Remember, Satoshi Nakamoto disappeared as a person at the same time that Dave Kleiman unfortunately died with severe medical problems. So there's this huge thing with Dave Kleiman's estate about these Bitcoin. So filing this kind of application would give Craig more weight in that potential dispute over those Bitcoin. Plus, there's this whole Tulip Trust. We can recall that the original mined Bitcoins that were supposedly mined within the group of people that were Satoshi Nakamoto, those Bitcoins are in a Tulip Trust with 3 private keys. But notably, the trust is time-locked and expires next year. So next year, someone's going to have access to a whole bunch of Bitcoin. Can other people make a valid claim against those Bitcoin, against whoever tries to move them? Well, if you can establish ahead of time that you are the Satoshi Nakamoto and fraudulently deny the others, and I say fraudulently because Craig has also done such things as in lawsuits, put in emails that support his position, but which include cryptographic signatures, which are obviously dated from the wrong period. So Craig doesn't seem to have the crypto savvy to put in good fraudulent evidence, never mind to develop Bitcoin. But he's doing these kinds of fraudulent things to establish his name so that he can win the lawsuit, so that he can win buyers for his company assets, so that he can maintain control of Bitcoin that come available next year. All of this kind of does make sense.
Edward, Jason, unfortunately, that's all we have time for today, but thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure, as always, having both of you on our program today. Thank you.
Thanks, Leah.
Now, before we sign off, I do have a last-minute update from our editorial staff regarding the crypto market. The total market capitalization has slipped south of the $250 billion mark. Trading activity has shown no significant changes. The CoinMarketCap website's daily traded volume has stayed close to the $80 billion level. While most of the top assets are trading slightly lower, the Binance coin has remained in the positive territory. Well, that is all for this Wednesday's Crypto Now live show. We thank Jason Fernandez and Edward Iskra for the expert analysis. We thank the audience for joining us and invite you all to we invite you all to accompany us every weekday at the same time.